Before you drift off tonight, let's start with something cold. Not the kind that bites, but the kind that comforts. The kind of cold that softens the edges of a summer day and melts into something sweet. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now get comfortable, dim the lights, close your eyes, and just listen. Let your mind drift. There's no need to remember anything. This story is here to keep you company as you rest. Now, picture this. You're a king. It's the year 300 BCE. The desert air is thick, and the palace stone beneath your feet is hot. But someone is walking toward you with a silver tray. On it, snow, flavored with rose water, sweet, cold, melting quickly. You don't know it yet, but what you're holding is the earliest ancestor of ice cream. Tonight, we're going to explore the slow, shimmering history of how that snow became dessert, how emperors, explorers, chemists, and chefs shaped a global obsession with something cold, creamy, and comforting. This is a story of snow and sweetness, science and surprise. It's a story of how we learn to hold on to winter in the palm of our hands. Long before the electric freezer, the supermarket pint, or the corner scoop shop, humans were obsessed with the idea of cold, not just for preservation, but for pleasure. And in the beginning, that meant learning how to capture something as fleeting as ice. In ancient Mesopotamia, people carved deep pits into the ground and lined them with straw. Snow was collected from distant mountains and packed inside. This wasn't used to store meat or grain. It was saved for the elite, used to chill drinks or mix with honey during the hottest months. In Egypt, shallow clay trays were left out in the desert night, allowing the dry air and temperature swings to form a delicate skin of ice. It wasn't enough to store, just enough to impress. But in ancient Persia, ice became an art. By 500 BCE, Persian engineers had designed enormous domes called yakhchals, ancient refrigerators made from mud brick and cooled with underground air tunnels. During winter, workers would collect ice from nearby rivers and carry it into the domes. Inside, the temperature stayed low enough to keep it frozen well into summer. With that ice, they created faluda, thin rice noodles served in a syrup of rosewater and lime, chilled to a slushy consistency. It wasn't ice cream yet, but it was a dessert. It was cold, and it was beautiful. Now imagine the stillness of a Persian courtyard. A breeze cuts through the heat. A silver bowl is placed before you. Inside, something soft, chilled, and fragrant. The first spark of frozen delight. In China, during the Tang dynasty, the imperial court was experimenting with something new. Buffalo milk mixed with flour and camphor, cooled using a mixture of ice and saltpeter. An early form of chemical refrigeration. This milk ice, reserved for the emperor, was kept in bronze containers sealed tight. Meanwhile in Rome, emperors like Nero sent runners up into the Apennines to retrieve snow. It was mixed with fruit pulps and honey, stirred until it resembled a rudimentary sorbet. It was served in glass goblets during lavish feasts, cold, sweet, ephemeral. This pattern repeated across civilizations. In India, the Mughal emperors chilled mangoes and sweet milk in mountain snow. In Greece, early texts mention chilled wines and ices as elite luxuries. In Arab cultures, sweetened juices and sherbets were poured over ice brought down from hills, then flavored with tamarind, lemon, or orange blossom. All of these were performances as much as desserts. To serve something cold in a hot climate was an expression of wealth and power. It said, "I can reach into the mountains. I can bend the seasons." Yet even then, these weren't the creamy scoops we know today. They were cold, yes, sweet sometimes, but still missing something: the smooth, emulsified texture of milk, cream, and air. And so, the idea of frozen dessert stayed a secret of the powerful. Something reserved for palaces and poetry, for rose gardens and tiled courtyards. As the centuries passed, the techniques would change, but the dream of ice that melts sweet on the tongue remained. Let your mind linger there for a moment. A shaded stone courtyard, the sound of sandals on tile, a shallow bowl in your hand, dripping with snow and syrup. The first step towards something much colder, much creamier, and much more familiar. The world hadn't invented ice cream yet, but the craving was already there. From cold snow and syrupy ices, the world slowly turned towards something richer. The transformation was gradual. No single moment, no clean invention. Just the slow fusion of tradition, milk, cold, and creativity. What had once been luxury turned into legacy, passed down through empires and kitchens until it found its texture. Let's drift now into the heart of Renaissance Europe, where the next great chapter of ice cream quietly took shape. The year is sometime in the 16th century. You're standing in a grand kitchen in Florence. Copper pots simmer with custards. Hands stir slowly with wooden spoons. Outside, noble guests sip chilled fruit waters under flowering pergolas. Somewhere in this moment, the recipe begins to evolve. Milk, once preserved with honey and dried herbs, is now cooled with ice. Sugar, expensive and imported, is added carefully, like treasure. The mixture is churned slowly, not frozen solid, but coaxed into something new. Not quite custard, not quite sorbet, but something smoother, denser, creamier. Catherine de' Medici, born into the powerful Italian family, would later marry into the French crown, and with her, she brought more than wealth and political ties. She brought cooks, techniques, and most importantly, a taste for frozen sweets. At royal banquets in France, dishes called ices or iced creams began to appear. Still rare, still elite. But the idea had taken root. In Paris, the cafes of the 17th and 18th centuries became playgrounds for the wealthy and curious. Here, frozen creams were sold to those who could afford the strange pleasure. Early recipes, written in elegant script, spoke of orange water, clove, and elderflower. Nothing like the tubs of today, but close in spirit. By the 1660s, the word ice cream had started to enter English kitchens. One early English recipe reads, "Take sweet cream, mix it with sugar and orange water. Place in a pan of ice and stir until it begins to stiffen. It will please the mouth and cool the head." This wasn't for the masses. Only the upper classes had access to ice houses, deep brick-lined pits where winter's ice was stored underground, sometimes beneath stables, hidden under straw and shadow. These ice houses were status symbols. The colder your desserts, the wealthier your estate. Meanwhile, in Italy, gelato was beginning to find its identity. Different from modern ice cream, gelato used less fat and less air, making it denser and silkier. Often fruit-based, served in small cups, and made fresh in small batches, gelato was served by street vendors and aristocrats alike. Enter Francesco Procopio dei Coltelli, a Sicilian chef who brought his sorbet and gelato recipes to Paris and opened Café Procop in 1686. It became a hub for philosophers, artists, and royalty. Here, Voltaire and Rousseau, may have once debated over spoons of lemon ice. Back in England, by the mid-18th century, wealthy households began experimenting with their own recipes. Cookbooks from the era include pages dedicated to iced creams, with flavours like apricot, elderflower, and burnt caramel. The texture, at last, was beginning to resemble something close to today's dessert. But the process was still laborious. Ice had to be harvested. Salt was needed to lower its freezing point. The mixture had to be stirred constantly by hand to prevent crystallization. Imagine the scene. A stone kitchen, dimly lit. A servant turning a crank, slowly, endlessly, while a copper container chills within a pail of ice and salt. The mixture thickens. The air cools. The scent of vanilla drifts up from the cream. What was once snow and syrup has become something wholly different. Ice cream. The first mechanical sorbetière, a hand-cranked ice-packed cylinder for churning, became the tool of choice for serious cooks. Recipes travelled. Variations emerged. Custard bases became popular in France. Lighter, whipped styles took hold in England. But for most of Europe, ice cream remained rare, exotic, expensive. It wouldn't be until the next century that the dessert would take its biggest leap, across the Atlantic. And there, in the hands of presidents and street vendors, it would begin its journey from aristocratic curiosity to everyday comfort. But for now, we remain in this golden kitchen light, surrounded by copper pots and wooden paddles, the air perfumed with sugar and citrus. Outside, the garden is still. Guests laugh in the distance, and somewhere, behind the scenes, someone is churning. Not for show, not for science, but for something soft, something sweet, something soon to be served. The cold travelled west. By the 1700s, frozen desserts had drifted from royal tables into cafes and cookbooks. But it was in America, a young and restless colony, that ice cream would truly begin to evolve from luxury to legend. It didn't arrive with a bang. It seeped in slowly, in handwritten recipes and whispered mentions, in letters between the wealthy. But it was there, in the background of early American life. George Washington loved ice cream. That much is known. Records from the 1790s show that he spent a small fortune on ice cream one summer, over $200, which would amount to thousands today. He had pewter ice cream pots imported, ice houses built, recipes stored in delicate script. One diary even notes that he had strawberry ice cream served to guests on the 4th of July. It wasn't just indulgence, it was identity. Ice cream, cold and precise, became part of the performance of civility and refinement in a new world trying to prove itself. Thomas Jefferson took it further. During his time in France, he fell in love with vanilla ice cream, so much so that he brought the recipe back with him, written out in his own hand. It's one of the oldest surviving American ice cream recipes, and it reads like a love letter. 2 bottles of good cream, 6 yolks of eggs, ½ pound of sugar, a stick of vanilla. The custard was slowly cooked, chilled, churned by hand. The vanilla came in pods, fragrant, expensive. The result was rich, soft, and unlike anything most people had ever tasted. But it remained a dessert of the elite, made by enslaved chefs in the kitchens of Monticello, served in silver bowls, eaten on shaded porches. Still, the idea was out. Ice cream wasn't just a European trick. It was American now, too. As the 1800s wore on, everything changed. And it changed with ice. Enter Frederick Tudor, a Bostonian merchant obsessed with a strange idea. shipping ice around the world. He began harvesting ice from frozen lakes in New England, cutting it into blocks, packing it in sawdust, and loading it onto ships. At first, people laughed. Who would want to buy ice? But Tudor persisted. He sent ice to the Caribbean, to India, to the American South, and it worked. Slowly, cities without winter began to receive summer ice. This global ice trade changed everything. Suddenly, people who had never seen snow could chill their drinks, and more importantly, they could make ice cream. In cities like Philadelphia and New York, early confectioners began to sell ice cream to the public. Small shops with tin signs and striped awnings. Men with hand-pulled carts and wooden churns. Street vendors who rang bells and doled out scoops for a penny. Some of the earliest of these vendors were black Americans, both free and formerly enslaved, who used their knowledge of cooking and cooling to carve out livelihoods. One of the most famous was Augustus Jackson, a former White House chef often called the father of ice cream. He developed better methods for mixing and transporting ice cream and sold his creations throughout Philadelphia. But even then, ice cream wasn't quite easy. You still needed ice, salt, muscle, time. The churns had to be turned constantly, and the mixture watched carefully. Crystals had to be avoided, smoothness achieved through patience. Then came the machines. In 1843, Nancy Johnson, an American woman, patented the first hand-cranked ice cream freezer. Her invention, a metal cylinder inside a wooden bucket filled with ice and salt, revolutionized the process. No more endless stirring, no more unpredictable textures. Suddenly, anyone with a little time, some ice, and a crank could make ice cream at home. Magazines printed recipes. Cookbooks offered variations. Middle-class families began to hold ice cream socials. The dessert moved from palaces to parlors, from silver trays to porcelain bowls set on picnic blankets. As industrialization swept across the country, ice cream found itself right at home. Ice factories emerged. Refrigerated rail cars were invented. Sugar became cheaper, and milk, once rare, was now widely available. By the late 1800s, ice cream parlors dotted American cities. Gilded mirrors, marble counters, and wire-backed chairs created spaces of leisure and indulgence. Women, who were often unwelcome in bars or clubs, could gather here, eat, talk, dream. Flavors expanded: vanilla, chocolate, lemon, pistachio, rum raisin. Toppings appeared: nuts, syrups, whipped cream. The scoop became a ritual, a gesture, a moment of pause in a noisy world. So here we are, no longer in a palace or a temple, but on a bustling American street. The air smells like sugar and summer. A child presses their nose to the glass display. A woman stirs a spoon in a paper cup. A man wipes his mustache and sighs with satisfaction. Ice cream has arrived, not as a miracle, not as a status symbol, but as something you share on a bench, with a friend, in the sun, before it melts. Ice cream was sweet, yes, but it was also something else. By the early 20th century, it had taken on weight, not literal weight, but emotional weight. It became a symbol, a comfort, a soft reminder of home, of childhood, of safety. And in times of war, that mattered. When World War I broke out, ice cream wasn't part of any official rations, but American soldiers, especially those stationed near cities, often sought it out on leave. In letters home, some mentioned it longingly: cold, creamy relief from long days in muddy trenches. By the 1920s, ice cream was a full-blown American obsession. Soda fountains boomed. The ice cream soda invented by mistake in the late 1800s, became a cultural staple. Fizzy, creamy, effervescent, playful. Teenagers gathered at counters to sip floats. Couples shared sundaes with 2 spoons. Children raced to finish cones before they dripped. But then, another war. When World War II began, the US government understood something surprising. Ice cream boosted morale. It was cheap, it was familiar, it was cold, creamy nostalgia at a time when the world was burning. So they made a choice. The military began shipping millions of gallons of ice cream to troops overseas. Refrigerated barges were built. Special portable ice cream machines were designed to operate aboard Navy ships. Entire supply chains were developed just to deliver ice cream to the front lines. One Navy barge, sometimes called the floating ice cream factory, could produce 10 gallons every 7 minutes. To a homesick 19-year-old from Ohio serving in the Pacific, a paper cup of ice cream wasn't just dessert. It was a reminder of movie nights, baseball games, porch swings, and peacetime. Ice cream became a kind of psychological weapon, something soft to fight the hardness of war. Back home, however, things were more complicated. Sugar was rationed, dairy was limited. Many American civilians learned to make ice cream substitutes, chilled desserts made with gelatin, margarine, or powdered milk. Ice cream was no longer just food, it was a statement of sacrifice. And then came the soft serve. In the late 1930s, Tom Carvel, yes, the man behind the Carvel brand, accidentally stumbled upon the idea. His ice cream truck had a flat tire, and his ice cream began to melt. Instead of throwing it away, he sold it soft. People loved it. He went on to invent the first soft serve machine and opened one of the first soft serve stands in America. Around the same time, Dairy Queen was developing its own version, creamier, colder, and perfectly suited for a post-war population that wanted sweetness in a hurry. By the 1950s, the war was over, but the ice cream boom was just beginning. Drive-ins served shakes in paper cups, carried out on roller skates. Ice cream trucks, playing gentle jingles, became icons of suburban summer, and every corner had a freezer filled with cones, cups, bars, and sandwiches. Marketing began to reshape the image of ice cream entirely. No longer a royal indulgence, no longer a patriotic symbol. It became something deeply personal, a reward, a celebration, a consolation prize after a bad day. Brands leaned into it, selling flavors as emotions. Chocolate was indulgence, vanilla was nostalgia, strawberry was gentle and sweet. In commercials, families gathered around sundaes. Children grinned through sticky faces. Lovers shared a single spoonful beneath fireworks. Ice cream became America's dessert, not because it was invented there, but because it became part of the emotional language of the country. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Europe had its own evolution. Italian gelato shops re-emerged after the war. French patisseries added chilled creams to their menus. Even in countries recovering from destruction, there was room for something cold and sweet. In Japan, mochi ice cream began its quiet rise. In India, traditional kulfi made from slowly boiled milk continued to flourish. In the Philippines, halo halo, a mix of shaved ice, fruit, and evaporated milk, grew even more elaborate. Each place had its own frozen story, but the feeling was the same: comfort, calm, celebration, a moment of coolness in a hot, uncertain world. So now, let your mind return to a small American town in 1946. The war has ended. The sun is setting. A white truck rolls slowly down the street, its speaker playing a soft, tinny tune. Children run barefoot down sidewalks. A mother leans against the porch railing. Somewhere, a boy hands over a nickel and receives a cone. Tall, twisting, dripping. The world has changed, but ice cream remains. Not just a treat, but a memory you can taste. The world was hungry. After 2 world wars, a depression, and decades of invention and hardship, the 20th century was ready to indulge. And few things captured that indulgence more perfectly, more gently, more universally than ice cream. But how it was served, how it was branded, and how it spread from street carts to supermarket shelves, that story is as soft and swirled as the dessert itself. We begin with the cone. For most of its early life, ice cream was served in cups, goblets, or shallow dishes, often made of metal or porcelain. Vendors had to collect these after use, clean them, and reuse them. It was not ideal, messy, time-consuming, costly. Then came 1904. The story is debated. There are multiple claims, but the most enduring version says this. At the World's Fair in St. Louis, an ice cream vendor ran out of dishes. Next to him was a Syrian pastry seller who had been struggling to sell his thin, crisp waffles. Seeing the opportunity, he rolled one of his pastries into a cone shape and handed it to the ice cream man. The vendor scooped ice cream into the cone, and just like that, history changed. The cone was portable, disposable, edible. It made the treat more accessible, easier to serve, easier to enjoy. Soon, the cone became standard. Vendors across America adopted it. Waffle cones, sugar cones, cake cones. The shape varied, but the joy was the same. A soft, cold scoop in a crisp, warm nest. But this was just the beginning. As the decades passed, brands began to emerge, not just local shops, but national empires of flavor. Häagen-Dazs, created in the 1960s by a Polish immigrant in the Bronx, chose a name that sounded European and elegant, even though it meant nothing in any language. Their goal was simple: richer, denser, creamier ice cream, fewer stabilizers, higher fat content, more indulgence per bite. Their vanilla was bold, their chocolate deep, their marketing minimal, sleek, aspirational. Then came Ben & Jerry's, from Vermont, the opposite in tone. Launched in 1978 by 2 friends who took a $5 correspondence course on ice cream making. Their pints were loud, colorful, overflowing with chunks and swirls. They stood for activism, local farms, and creative chaos. Flavors like Cherry Garcia, Fish Food, and Chunky Monkey weren't just tasty. They were cultural statements. Between them, and dozens of others, the ice cream aisle became a battlefield of identity. Smooth versus chunky. Traditional versus outrageous. Subtle versus loud. In the 1980s and 1990s, super premium became a buzzword. People wanted indulgence. They wanted richness, and brands delivered. At the same time, soft serve chains expanded rapidly. Dairy Queen had already taken hold in the 1940s, offering swirled cones, dipped in chocolate, served through car windows. But now, there were competitors. Carvel, Baskin-Robbins, Cold Stone Creamery. Each had its trick. Baskin-Robbins promised 31 flavors, one for each day of the month. Carvel had its famous character cakes, Fudgy the Whale and Cookie Puss. Cold Stone introduced mix-ins, folded on a frozen slab while customers watched. Elsewhere, ice cream novelties were evolving. The ice cream sandwich, first patented in 1928, became a lunchroom favorite, rectangular, with soft chocolate wafers and a center of vanilla. The drumstick, a cone pre-filled with hard-packed ice cream, sealed with chocolate, topped with nuts. Popsicles, though not technically ice cream, carried their own legacy, invented by an 11-year-old boy in 1905 who left a cup of soda outside overnight. Every shape had its moment, every packaging format carried nostalgia, and all of it was driven by emotion. Ice cream had long since become more than food. It was a story, a time capsule, a reward. Think of your first breakup, healed slightly by a pint of chocolate. A summer afternoon, chasing the jingle of a truck through the neighborhood. A late-night gas station run for a pint with a friend. A birthday party, melting scoops sliding off paper plates. A hospital visit, where the only thing that tasted right was vanilla. In television, film, and advertising, ice cream became shorthand for comfort and release. The girl crying with a spoon straight from the carton, the father handing a cone to his child, the couple sharing a sundae with 2 long spoons, laughing between bites. By the turn of the 21st century, ice cream had fragmented even further. There were lactose-free brands, vegan oat milk pints, keto-friendly tubs, boutique gelato shops, rolled ice cream from Thailand, shaved snow from Taiwan, artisan trucks offering flavors like Earl Grey and lavender honey. But at the center of all this variety was something simple, a need for comfort, a ritual, a reminder that life, even in chaos, can be sweet. So now, let your mind wander to a strip mall on a warm evening. The fluorescent lights buzz. A bell rings as the door opens. Inside, children peeking over glass cases, hands pointing, voices laughing. The server reaches in, scoops, packs, swirls. A paper bowl is handed over. It's heavy with possibilities. Outside, the world spins quickly. But here, in this moment, with a bite of something cold and creamy, everything slows down. The story of ice cream doesn't really end. It doesn't have a neat finale, a final invention, a last great flavor. It just melts. Softly, quietly, slowly. Ice cream isn't about endings. It's about pauses, memories, and the fleeting sweetness between moments. So as we drift into the final stretch of this story, let's step away from factories and freezers and wander a bit around the world, back in time, through the places and people who shaped what ice cream really means. In India, they call it kulfi. It's denser than Western ice cream, made by simmering sweetened milk for hours until it reduces and thickens, poured into conical molds, frozen without churning, and flavored with saffron, pistachio, rose, or cardamom. It's eaten slowly, licked or sliced, sold from metal carts under banyan trees, a taste of heat and history carried on sticks. In Japan, you might find a small mochi ball, soft rice flour outside, chilled ice cream inside. There's also matcha soft serve, swirled with powdered green tea, or azuki bean sundaes served in wooden bowls, topped with chestnuts and syrup. The portions are smaller, the presentation quieter, the joy just as large. In Turkey, ice cream is called dondurma, and it stretches. Made with salep, a flour made from orchid roots, and mastic resin, Turkish ice cream is chewy and elastic. Street vendors perform tricks, flipping cones upside down without losing the scoop. Children laugh, tourists clap, but the texture, dense, almost chewy, a flavor that lingers. In the Philippines, it's sorbets, sometimes called dirty ice cream, not for its cleanliness, but for its humble, homemade charm. It's served in colourful carts with bells and bicycle wheels. Flavors like uber, cheese, coconut, scooped into buns instead of cones. In Thailand, street stalls serve rolled ice cream, poured as liquid onto an icy metal plate, chopped and flattened, then rolled into spirals with spatulas. It's dramatic, hypnotic, a dessert turned performance. In Argentina, helado is more than gelato, less than ice cream. Rich, smooth, sold in kilos, shared at family tables after long dinners. Dulce de leche swirled with chocolate, banana with cinnamon. A ritual, not just a treat. Every country has its own frozen moment, not always made the same way, not always flavored alike, but always shared, always remembered. You might not remember your childhood phone number, but you'll remember the taste of the ice cream truck from your old street. You'll remember the cone that melted too fast on vacation, the pint you opened on a lonely night, the scoop you shared with someone who made you laugh. You'll remember the sound of a freezer door opening, the smell of sugar and dairy, the texture of cold against your tongue. And maybe that's what makes ice cream special. It's fleeting, melting, imperfect. But in its softness, it makes something else solid. Memory. Tonight, as this story winds down, let's end not with the science or the business, but with the quiet moments. A grandmother handing over a spoon, a father walking slowly with 2 cones in one hand, a friend opening the freezer at midnight and asking if you want to share. The taste changes, the flavors evolve, but the feeling, that soft, chilled pause from the world, stays, always. Ice cream is a ritual, not a formal one with scripts or sacred symbols, no incense, no altars, but a human ritual, quiet and intuitive. A pause that's older than memory, a softness we return to without knowing why. There is no announcement when the ritual begins, only a small familiar decision, the walk to the freezer, the rustle of a drawer, the soft pop of a lid, a spoon, chosen without thinking. Outside, the night is still. Inside, the light of the freezer hums. You reach in. The cold nips at your fingers. There they are, the pints, the bricks, the tubs, vanilla with little flecks, chocolate swirled with fudge, something experimental with an unfamiliar name. You choose not based on logic, but mood. Something calls to you. The first scoop is never easy. Ice cream gives slowly. The spoon slides across the top, no traction. You tilt it, press, and then a curl. The first ribbon of sweetness, like a soft scroll unrolling. It resists, then gives. Cold, smooth, structured. You lift it, admiring its shape. Then the taste. Cool, sweet, immediate. But it doesn't stay that way. Ice cream doesn't hit all at once. It unfolds. First cold, then flavor. Texture, then memory. It melts at its own speed. You take another bite. You're not thinking now. You're feeling. Letting the texture roll across your tongue. Letting the moment stretch. The air seems quieter now. The room dimmer. The spoon lighter in your hand. Some people eat ice cream slowly, with reverence, scraping the sides, smoothing the surface. Others dig into the middle, bold, messy, unapologetic. Each approach is valid, each a reflection of mood. The careful scraper might be seeking calm. The tunnel digger might be seeking escape. Either way, the outcome is the same. A small, temporary kind of peace. A moment when the noise fades and the world narrows to just sweetness. You may not remember the last time you felt this still. No alerts, no notifications. Just the clink of spoon on container. Just the hush of your own breath as the cold winds its way through your chest. You're not thinking about work or money or plans. You're thinking about nothing. And somehow that feels right. Now shift your mind slightly. Let's drift into a memory. You're a child, a cone in your hand, the scoop already tipping. You're racing the sun, licking around the edges, laughing as it drips onto your wrist. Or maybe you're in high school, sitting on a bench with someone you like. You've each ordered something different. You trade bites. Laugh about how yours is better. Or maybe it's later. A bad day, a quiet kitchen, a pint and a blanket. No celebration, no explanation. Just the familiar weight of comfort. These aren't just ice cream memories. These are you memories. And somehow, they always come with a flavor. Ice cream has become so woven into our lives that we don't always notice how powerful it is, how universal, how intimate. In weddings, it's served between speeches. In hospitals, it's the first thing patients are allowed to eat after surgery. In funerals, it sometimes appears, unspoken, a silent gesture towards sweetness in sorrow. It shows up in heartbreak, in healing, in celebration. And somehow, it's always enough. Let's travel for a moment, not in space, but in memory. Back to a summer boardwalk, bare feet, the ocean air sticky with salt and sugar, a winter evening. You're under a blanket, a bowl resting on your chest, the windows fogged from warmth. A diner at midnight, fluorescent lights, a sundae melting as you and a friend talk about life and time and nothing at all. Ice cream is always there, filling the quiet space between moments. It doesn't try to fix anything, it just is. Think about the container itself. There's something poetic about it, holding something temporary in something sturdy. A pint is solid, cold, predictable, but the contents, always changing, melting, shifting, just like us. No scoop is the same. No spoonful tastes quite like the one before. You eat, and with each bite, a bit more disappears. But it's not loss, it's transformation. The dessert becomes part of you. The moment becomes a memory. Some people eat straight from the pint. Others transfer it carefully into a bowl. Some add toppings, syrups, sprinkles, fruit. Others like it plain, unadorned, unhurried. Some eat it only when happy. Others save it for sadness. Some don't eat it at all, but still remember it fondly as a symbol of a simpler time. Now imagine you're in a house, alone. The lights are low. There's a low hum from the fridge. You're not sure what brought you here, only that something sweet was needed. You sit, open the lid, and then the ritual begins. Scoop, taste, melt, pause. You sigh, not out of sadness or joy, but something softer, a release, a settling. Outside, the wind rustles the trees. A distant car passes. Inside, you are still, anchored by a spoon and a swirl of flavor. The world keeps spinning. News breaks, work piles up, people come and go. But ice cream? It remains unchanged, always there, always soft, always just cold enough to slow you down. Maybe that's the magic of it. It doesn't chase, it doesn't demand, it waits. For you, for your quietest moment, for your deepest exhale. Tonight, as the lights dim and your body softens into stillness, remember this. There are few things in life that ask nothing of you, few things that offer so much in silence. Ice cream is one of them, not because of what it is, milk, sugar, cold, but because of what it allows. A breath, a memory, a moment, melted, tasted, gone, but somehow always there. There's something strange that happens at the end of a story. Not just a closing, but a soft folding in, a kind of exhale. You're not rushing toward a conclusion anymore. You're floating. And that's exactly where we are now. The history of ice cream isn't over. It never really is. It melts and reforms, freezes and flows. It's not a straight line, but a cycle. Every scoop eaten is the beginning of another memory, another ritual, another quiet night. So let's not end this story. Let's rest in it. Let's start with a street. It could be anywhere. The sun is low, the shadows are long. A child runs ahead of their parent, feet slapping the pavement, arm outstretched, pointing. And then, that sound. The ice cream truck's jingle. Tinny, repetitive, faint but unmistakable. A melody that has lived in our bones for generations. The soundtrack to 1,000 childhoods. The truck pulls up. The window slides open. A menu is taped to the side. Faded images of familiar treats. Bomb pops, fudge bars, cones dipped in chocolate. Ice cream sandwiches with tiny chocolate chips pressed into the edges. The child picks one, changes their mind, picks another. The adult smiles. The transaction is small, a few coins, maybe $1, but the value, immeasurable. The wrapper crinkles. The treat is unwrapped. The first bite. And there it is again. The silence between moments. The pause. The soft joy. Somewhere else, a different kind of ritual unfolds. A date night. 2 people walking home. They pass a late-night ice cream shop, glowing softly like a lighthouse. One of them suggests stopping. The other grins. They go in. Inside, glass displays show rows of flavors, some traditional, some strange. The scooper wears a paper hat. The walls are lined with old photos. They each try samples, small pink spoons, tiny decisions, laughter, a pause, a choice. They sit outside, side by side on a bench. The conversation slows. The ice cream melts a little between bites, but they don't mind. The sweetness is enough. Now shift again, to a hospital room, quiet, sterile, a bed, a window, the rhythmic beep of a machine. A nurse enters, smiling gently. In her hand, a small plastic cup of vanilla ice cream. It's not fancy, it's not gourmet, but it's something cool, something gentle, something known. The patient takes it, their hand a little shaky, their eyes a little tired. They eat slowly, one bite at a time. And in that moment, it's not about illness. It's not about treatment. It's just ice cream. Something soft in a hard place. Something sweet in a moment that needs it. Let's go further back now. A farm. Early 1900s. A summer day. A porch. A large wooden churn stands beside a rocking chair. A group of children sit nearby, waiting, watching. Inside the churn, cream, sugar, salt, ice. A hand cranks the handle, slow and steady. They're making ice cream by hand. Someone tells a story. Someone sings a song. The crank keeps turning. When it's finally done, the lid is lifted. And there it is. The cold, soft result of patience and rhythm. They scoop it into tin cups. The children cheer. A breeze blows across the porch. That ice cream isn't mass-produced. It isn't branded. But it's perfect. Because it's shared. Now think of birthdays, of cakes and candles. But always, somewhere, a tub of ice cream. Scooped beside the slice, melting into the frosting. A side character, but a necessary one. Or maybe it's after a breakup, someone crying on the couch. A friend arrives, says nothing, just places a spoon and a pint on the table. Sometimes, ice cream speaks best in silence. And then there are the flavors. How strange, when you think about it, that something frozen and sweet can contain so many identities. Vanilla, soft, classic, calming. Chocolate, rich, deep, grounding. Strawberry, bright, nostalgic, gentle. Then the more unusual ones. Mint chocolate chip, bubblegum, coffee, green tea, blackberry basil, goat cheese fig, brown butter bourbon. Each one a little story, a risk, a memory waiting to happen. Ice cream holds time. It freezes it, suspends it. A scoop doesn't just cool you down. It transports you to a beach, a wedding, a long drive, a conversation you can't quite forget. We don't remember all our meals, but we remember the ice creams, because they come with feeling. Maybe that's why we keep returning to it, even as adults, even as trends change, even as palates evolve. Ice cream stays. It doesn't ask for much, just a pause, a spoon, a moment. It's the only food that people whisper about late at night. Do we have any ice cream? Not chips, not crackers, not soup. Ice cream. The comfort in the cold, the sweetness in the stillness. And when it's gone, we never feel robbed. We feel filled, satisfied, softer. So as this story melts toward its close, don't think of this as an ending. Think of it as a slow drift, a soft swirl, a quiet return. Maybe right now there's a pint in your freezer. Maybe you'll open it tomorrow, or tonight, or next week. Maybe the next time you hear a truck's jingle, you'll smile. Not because you want a cone, but because of what it means. A simpler time, a safe place, a reminder that even on hard days, there is cold sweetness in the world, waiting. Thank you for staying with this story, for walking with us through temples and parlors, palaces and porches, from Persia to Vermont, from milk and snow to sprinkles and waffle cones. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let the story soften in your mind. Let it melt slowly, like the final spoonful in a warm room. And if you dream of anything tonight, let it be this: a paper cup in your hand, a flavor you forgot you loved, and a world where, no matter what, there's always time for one more scoop.